Welcome to the workshop where I'm going to be using this cherry, maple and these flowers to make a truly one-of-a-kind wedding gift. Here's what's coming up. Two of my friends just got married and they used these dried flowers as their wedding confetti. And as you can see, they had quite a lot left over. Actually, to be honest, that's not even all of it. There's a whole extra bag of it here. So rather than let it go to waste, what I'm going to do is preserve it in a one-of-a-kind gift, so they always have something to remind them of their special day. Right, let's have a little look at the design. So you might have come across what's called a Romeo and Juliet charcuterie board. And this is like you see here, where you've got two different boards that fit together as one to represent a couple. So I designed my own version of this, starting in Inkscape with a 2D drawing, and then I went into Fusion 360 for the 3D model. And the key design element here is that big cutout in the middle of each of them, because that is where our wedding flowers are going to go. Now, without further ado, let's get into the build. You might be wondering whether the flowers are just going to decompose and spoil, because if that's the case, it's not really the kind of gift you want to give. It would be quite disappointing. But the key here is, as long as they're dried flowers, which is exactly what I'm using, then it's going to be okay. And I actually know this from my own experience, because I had dried flowers as my wedding confetti when I got married 4 years ago. And shortly after, I made these epoxy river coasters with the flowers in them. And as you can see, they've held up really well. The flowers are still very visible, they've got a lot of their original colour, and I've used these pretty much every day since, so I know that it's going to be a really durable gift. So yeah, to conclude, I'm confident that these Romeo and Juliet boards are going to stand the test of time, so we're ready to move on to the next step, which is to put the flowers in and then fill the epoxy. Right, we're a few days on and the epoxy is now dry, which is great, but things have not gone to plan. So there are a couple of problems. Problem number one is it turns out the flowers float. and have all floated to the top and broken through the surface. So if I was to flatten this, I'd have all sorts of holes in there and it would not be at all suitable for serving food, which is really quite a problem. Now the second one is more aesthetic, but the epoxy has sort of leaked through the grain and has discoloured the wood. So again, that's just taken away from the quality. This is meant to be a lovely wedding gift. That doesn't speak lovely wedding gift to me, unfortunately. And the final one, which is potentially recoverable, but it's just another problem, is that the epoxy's kind of leaked over the edge in some places. So I could sand that off, but when you consider it all together, I think I'm just going to start again. So unfortunately, Romeo and Juliet are going to be together, but they're going to be together in the bin. Anyway, on to the next one. Oh, well, that was quick. Anyway, this time I'm using some shellac to seal the wood first and prevent the epoxy from leaking along the grain. I'm also going to steal a trick that I saw on the Or Eyes Furniture YouTube channel, which is where you add a line of hot glue to contain the epoxy and to stop it spilling over. Right, what I've done is just pour a really shallow layer of epoxy, and that's just to hold the flowers in place so that when I come back with the second pour, which is going to fill it up to the full height, those flowers aren't going to float. The second pour went much better, and I also had a blowtorch on hand, which I used to pop all of those annoying little bubbles which sometimes form. And I was very, very pleased with the hot glue because it contained the epoxy nicely, and without it, it would have been seriously messy. So yeah, that's a good tip for the future. Once the epoxy had set, I headed back for one final operation on the CNC. I sanded up through the grits and then went on to use the most terrifying tool in my workshop, the router table. Now, as you can see, this is very much a homemade piece of equipment with its car jack lift and plywood top, but despite that, the results are surprisingly good. By now I was on the home straight of this project, and after a last bit of sanding I poured on a coat of oil to bring out that lovely finished colour of the wood. Now I do plan to add a coat of spray lacquer right at the end, so this is mostly just for the aesthetics of it all. My last step was to polish up the epoxy to the best finish that I could, and with that complete, it's time for the final reveal. Alright, that pretty much brings us to the end of this project, and as you can tell from the poor Romeo and Juliet in the bin, it hasn't all been smooth sailing. However, I would like to think that the finished result has been quite a success. So the plan now is that I'm going to package up these finished boards and send them off to the newlywed couple, who are the rightful owners both of the flowers but also the recipient of this gift, and I really hope that it's going to remind them of their special day for many years to come. As for the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.